Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining today. I know there'll be some stragglers continuing to join, but for the sake of time, I'd love to get this started. Welcome to our webinar, Level Up Construction Insurance Compliance and Review with AI. Just want to give a bit of housekeeping. If anybody has a question or comment in the bottom right corner, you'll see the Activities tab. Please feel free to utilize it. We'll do our best to get to each of your questions, comments. It's going to be more of a discussion as opposed to a presentation. So we'd love it to be interactive with people who are on this. Obviously, it's a topic that people are interested in. Otherwise, you wouldn't be joining. So at any time, please feel free to use that tab. And we'll get to it as best we can. Also, we are recording this. And after the call, we will share the recording with everybody. In the event you have to drop early or goes a little bit longer, you've got colleagues maybe that are interested but just couldn't join. So once again, thanks for joining. My name is Brian Connor. I am the Director of Client Success for Constrafor. And for those who maybe don't know much about Constrafor, Constrafor is a construction technology company that has built a platform of solutions to help the general contractor and subcontractor in their back office responsibilities. Each of those solutions consist of contract management, insurance management, we have invoicing, we have pre-qualification, we have diversity tracking, and we have an early pay program for subcontractors. I have been in the client success field for the better part of 20 years. In various industries, including real estate, a little bit of time in insurance. I've also been in payment processing, as well as my most current is construction. So excited to be co-hosting with two professionals and people that I consider partners with me as we continue to grow the platform within Constrafor, but also just to learn and recognize what's happening in the insurance industry. And there's no better two people than the next two people that I'll be introducing. The first is Mary Bishop. Mary Bishop is a partner with Construction Risk Partners. It is a construction insurance and brokerage firm that was established in 2006. Mary's role is providing a sophisticated level of risk management services to the company's largest clients. From both a traditional insurance placements and controlled program perspectives. Mary's experience spans over 3 decades, of which I believe the last 2 decades were in construction or are in construction. Mary, how'd I do?
Great, Brian. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me first thank the team at Constrafor for asking me to participate in this event. I'm very humbled that I was asked to share my experience with the folks on this webinar, so thank you. I wear several hats here at CRP. My main role is to lead the RAP administration practice. For anyone that's not familiar with the term wrap-up, I imagine most people are at this point, but they're also known as OSIPs or CSIPs. I've been involved in the RAP space for the better part of 25 years, having handled administration, including among other items, COI compliancy, hence the introduction to Constrafor. As part of my overall contribution to CRP and our clients, I'm often tasked with finding solutions to the everyday needs of our contractors and owner developers on both traditional insurance buyer basis and wrap-ups. So that's my story. I'm happy to share with you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mary. And thank you again for being here as well. We really appreciate your partnership with us, Constrafor, and for being here today to share your knowledge and your expertise. Secondly, I'd like to introduce Brad Halliday. Brad comes to us from Kahn Construction, which is an E&R 400 level general contractor out of the great state of South Carolina. Brad is the risk manager for Kahn. And you have been in the industry of insurance for 28 years, 21 years being as an insurance broker, and the last 7 being the risk manager for Kahn. Brad, how'd I do?
Did great. Thank you very much. I'm excited to participate in this conversation. Interesting topic. I'm certainly not a AI or artificial intelligence expert, but my background as both a broker and a risk manager gives me a good perspective on how I think AI can and will enhance insurance compliance review in the construction industry. I'll try not to interchange AI, meaning artificial intelligence, with additional insured, because I'm much more familiar with AI additional insured than I am with AI artificial intelligence. But yeah, thank you very much for having me, and look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining. Next, we'll just talk a little bit about the agenda for today. We'll talk about the current landscape of risk management in construction for insurance compliance and review. We'll get into a little bit of AI in construction and insurance review, and maybe just touching upon a resource and tool that we've built at Constrafor to help, as compliance reviews are very important in the insurance world. Talk a little bit about that, and then overall, maybe just operational impact of implementing AI for construction insurance compliance and review. So with that being said, let's just start with the first topic, and that is the current landscape of risk management. Not being in it every day, but recognizing that there are many components of risk management in construction, from regulatory compliances that seem to be more strict, from environmental related issues, pollution, climate, weather, hazardous materials, that maybe 10 years ago wasn't as near the top of the list. And the other that I can think of is cyber. Increasing risks based on the technology that everybody is utilizing in construction and other industries, from data breaches to disruption to systems. Mary, I'll turn it over to you. What are your overall thoughts when it comes to the landscape of risk management today?
Well, there are emerging risks constantly, right? Whether it started the year 2000, Y2K was a big thing, and then we moved on to fast forward to the pandemic, and we're starting to see exclusions popping up, or we have seen exclusions popping up in policies around communicable diseases. Of course, wrap-up exclusions, they're the dreaded ones, but what we're starting to see is more and more exclusions come up within policies. Mm-hmm. So I think it's becoming more and more difficult to place good coverage without, and especially if you have brokers that are not aware of all these changes that are happening in the insurance policy placement. As brokers, we place and review all these different types of insurance policy, whether it's our own placements or those of our clients' subcontractors. That process is really quite cumbersome, requires a skill set and understanding. It's not widely available out there. And honestly, it's not really in great demand by job seekers. I don't know too many people who wake up on a given day and say, gee, I want to go to work and review a bunch of insurance policies today. So that's the position that we're in right now, is that we have a lot of complexity around the insurance policies, what's covered and what's not. But we rarely have a lot of people that have a positive view and want to understand an insurance policy, which is a contract, right, between the insured and insurer. So the complexity does lie in the verbiage of the policy forms. The exclusions remove coverage. Sometimes they carve back coverage. Understanding those nuances are key to properly structuring the policy, with the goal of transferring the risk either back to the downstream parties or directly to the insurance carrier. So I guess we look at a few different exclusions very, very closely. One is the dreaded wrap-up exclusion, as I mentioned earlier. I've spent a lot of time with the folks at Constrafor talking about this exclusion, analyzing the exclusion, and what we've come to realize is that the English language, just one of many, right? There's so many combination of words and phrases that can either grant coverage or remove coverage. So what we're working on together is to develop a tool that can help identify what is good language and what is bad language. And through the use of AI and a co-pilot, I think we could get there. Exactly.
I agree with you. And Brad, what are your thoughts?
From a general contractor's perspective, certainly we purchase our own insurance programs from brokers, and I have to review those. We also enter into contracts with project owners and have to review the requirements contained within those contracts and match them to our insurance requirements. But probably as important as those two items is the subcontractor insurance compliance review. And, with hundreds of projects going on at any one time, with numerous subcontractors on each project, multiple renewal dates, multiple policies to track, there's thousands and thousands of insurance documents that we have to review every day.
Sure.
And as Mary mentioned, it's not necessarily a skill set that people join a general contractor with. And so it just seems right with all of those pages of hard to understand contractual language that AI would be perfect for helping to digest and parse the nuances in those documents.
Definitely. And I guess from, just working with the two of you and working with many other general contractors, getting a feel of what the process was a decade ago versus what it is today, how much more, attention is being spent on it today. I'm guessing, I'm in New York, Mary, you're in New York, very litigious, areas of the country, and everything's lawyer, legal related. How much more time is being spent or should be spent based on today's environment?
Well, clearly, the region that we're operating in, Brian, and we do stretch across the country, but in this particular region, it is, the legal environment is, for lack of a better term, hellacious. So 10 years ago, we would just collect insurance certificates and track the expiration dates. And now we whittle down into the endorsements and the precise language that's appearing on the description of operations within the certificates of insurance, because we do want to be able to support the risk transfer of our clients, our contractor clients, back to the correct party.
Sure.
So it is much, much more in depth. And it has grown over the past decade for sure. And that's why, Brad, you mentioned additional insured endorsements. You and I are super well versed in all that, but, we've been doing this for a little bit of time, right? So we know the phrases, we know what's good language, what's bad, and continually training people around that has become, quite, not burdensome, but cumbersome to keep continually training. And as the law changes and interpretations change, you have to revisit what was good once, 5 years ago may not be good today because of the cases.
Yeah. You make a good point. The more general contractors I speak to that are prospects or client of ours, is what they're doing or willing to do right now. And I think a lot of them rely on a certificate of insurance, and they feel like that's enough. When really the most important part of what's being received is the policy attached to the certificate of insurance, right? So people feel like maybe they don't have enough time, or they don't have enough knowledge, or they don't want to be held responsible. That policy maybe gets overlooked or isn't necessarily requested. That all they're asking for is a certificate of insurance, and you guys more than me recognize that that's not really the legal document. That's not really the most important piece here. And I think as a result of implementing AI, which is what we're doing our best to do and have done, but it's growing, is that it's kind of giving that resource to people to let them know that we're here to help. We're here to grow with you. We're here to provide a tool. And I think that can kind of bring us into our second topic of specifically AI in construction. And I just want to stop and pause for a second, that if anybody has any questions or comments based on what Mary, Brad, or myself just spoke about when it comes to risk management, please do so. But AI, we've talked about it briefly. We recognize that it's in the industry as well as many industries. If you have a Ring camera, if you've got a thermostat, a smart thermostat, you're utilizing AI today. And maybe from my opinion in the construction world, and I know it's out there, but construction seems to be a little bit behind from a technology standpoint. But you're starting to see it being utilized more and more. And the softwares they're utilizing, from design and build, from project management, from drones, aerial views, And that kind of leads us to compliance reviews. One of the things that we're working on, especially with Mary and Brad, is what we call an insurance co-pilot, where we're involving AI into reviewing the actual, not only COI, but the policy associated. And for those that maybe don't have the time or the knowledge or the experience or don't feel comfortable, by utilizing a tool like this, it's going to partner with them. And I know, I've gotten the support of Brad and Mary, who are in the industry, recognizing that there is a need, in that something needs to help. And this is going to be an exciting opportunity, I think, for us, as well as those that are working in the industry. And I know there's some others out there, but in actually utilizing AI to go through the policy, in asking it questions that you would normally do when going through a review. Maybe I can just get your feedback on that, Mary, as we've spent some time building it together.
Sure.
Your feedback on AI and how this can really help the industry.
Sure. So I personally see the need for AI in our industry to enhance traditional risk management through two different lenses. First of all, from a broker's perspective, our job is to collect our clients' exposures, historical payroll, revenues, loss history, so on and so forth, exposure schedules, massage the information, prepare a submission, market it, place it, and make sure that we put together a great policy based on the best pricing terms and conditions. We bind the quotes, and then the policies are ultimately issued. Mm-hmm. So policy issuance entails a review by the broker, as you said before, mm-hmm. That was negotiated and bound, right? But about 8 years ago, my partner, Joe Charzenko, and I toyed with the idea of having some type of AI reader, which would supplement the policy review that's currently done by the account managers here at Construction Risk Partners, because we know it's an arduous, mundane task. Sure. We even met with a company 8 years ago used to review safety programs using AI to see if the application could be, applied to policy reading. But at that time, there were just way too many variables to move forward. So that's the first prong. The second prong, as I mentioned, is wrap administration. We clearly have a need for this in our service. It includes various parties working on a construction site where they have to submit those insurance certificates. We're starting to see contractor clients coming to us and saying, hey, we want you to not only collect insurance certificates, we want you to review policies. The concern with that is, number one, having people that are qualified, enough people that are qualified to do that, sure. And having a wide enough net to do the first part of what we do, which is collecting the information to marketplace and service. So it's really a manpower issue in my mind. What we're seeing is that the exclusions are pervasive and ever expanding, as I said earlier. Exclusions are being interpreted by the court in various jurisdictions. They're not favorable, right? Yeah. So we think that AI can help get us quicker to where there is language that's questionable or not acceptable. And, we think that that's going to be key to the future of risk management compliance.
Sure. Brad, how about you?
Yeah, well, talking about how things were done a decade ago in terms of, I'm speaking mainly from the GC risk transfer downstream to subcontractors, and keep in mind subcontractors to their subs as well, is equally important. But collecting, it's time consuming to just simply ask for the COIs, look at the limits, look at the dates, track when they renew. Just the basic process is time consuming. But unfortunately, and OCR technology helped a lot. There are platforms out there that are fairly straightforward that, help you collect them. They'll read the X dates. They'll look at the limits on the policy. But unfortunately, that's really just the beginning of the risk transfer process. And to spend that much time to really get a very small percentage of the benefit of what you're doing is frustrating. And I will say the certificate of insurance document itself is very clear at the top in bold print, larger font, and it says it confers no rights to the certificate holder, and that without, in lieu of actual policy endorsements, including additional insured waiver of subrogation, that you really don't have anything. So you know that the date that that certificate was issued, that there was coverage in place with that certain insurance company with that certain limit. But the keys to risk transfer, unfortunately, when you have claims and you experience them, is more around the exclusions on the underlying policy, as well as the risk transfer status of being an additional insured, and other provisions like waiver of subrogation, primary non-contributory, getting down into the weeds on those items. And unless you actually have the policy schedule of forms and endorsements, the entire policy itself, or at least the endorsements that are providing those provisions, you really don't have a whole lot with the certificate itself. So then you request and you get those certificate, the endorsements that go along with it, or some of the policy documents. Yeah. What do you do with it then? A lot of GCs, even here, the risk management department is not large enough to review the volumes of policy documents that you're going to obtain. And so you're using construction professionals and trying to train them to be insurance experts. Most of them don't want to be. That wasn't necessarily highlighted in their job descriptions. Right. But it's a critical part of what they do. So AI is ripe for reading and understanding those documents. I mean, the way we've been doing it for years is we've collected a spreadsheet where, we'll require the CG 2037, the CG 2010, just to name a few ISO endorsements, but there are hundreds, if not thousands, of insurance company specific endorsements that are intended to be acceptable alternatives to those. So then you get the endorsement. Well, how do you know if it really is an acceptable alternative or not? So we've been collecting a list of that, but having a technology tool that can read the endorsement and decide whether it meets a particular GC's criteria would be a game changer. And the Copilot is going a long way toward making that a reality.
Yeah, I think the two of you are kind of the exception based on, the complexities of what you do and your responsibilities. But in speaking, Brad, with a few of your staff members, I think that's what resonates with me is there's a lot on their plate. And by having something like Copilot, knowing that it's there for them to take that piece of their day, not to say that it's to be used as the be all end all, but there's still that human element that needs to review, right? This is not getting rid of your employees by any means. It is really just to help facilitate their day and to help with that piece maybe that they feel like they don't have time for as a project manager. And you had talked about OCR technology. We have that within our platform, but we also felt that wasn't enough. It wasn't enough to really help the industry of those doing that compliance review. And together with your partnership, we've come a long way in really building out this platform tool that's there to help. And I want people, and the more I speak to family about AI, there's this underlying theme that AI is bad, that AI is going to take your job, that AI is going to rule the world. When I see it differently in that it's going to help us get to that next stage, that next level, to make us focus more on other areas that are deserving of our time and attention. And in just a short amount of time this year that we've spent in Copilot and how it's grown and how it's learning and what it provides, I really do see it as an incredible tool for those responsible for these compliance reviews. It is amazing, and I have embraced it, and I know the two of you have embraced it. And I really do thank you guys for your participation in it. Anybody on the call have any feedback or questions, comments about the utilization of AI and potentially how you're using it? By all means, please share. It would be great to know and get feedback on. Lastly, third topic is operational impact of implementing AI for construction insurance compliance and review. I know we've talked a little bit about it, but maybe Mary, I'll just kick it to you from a labor shortage perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I do think a lot of brokers out there were probably feeling the pain post-pandemic of, finding people looking for work. And as I alluded to earlier, people don't wake up in the morning and say, geez, I think I want to review an insurance policy today, or maybe 10 of them. It's just not a thing that people look for.
Right.
So with any job function, there's duties that are mundane and others that are sexy and exciting, right?
Definitely.
So in order to attract, job seekers, I think if we could take the mundane element, peel it away, where people are more now engaged on a personal level with clients and doing more, bringing more value in terms of QA, QC, looking at the data that's put out by AI and the co-pilot and understanding that data and communicating it in a way to another human being, I think that would really speak to drawing in more people to making the job more attractive. Definitely. And taking away that mundane element.
Definitely. Brad, any thoughts from a labor shortage perspective similar to Mary's thoughts or opposite or in addition to?
Yes. Well, I mean, obviously in construction, there's a labor shortage issue across the board. In the risk management side, again, the folks, it's a piece of their job. Again, a very important piece. But I don't see, the AI co-pilot tool to me allows these smart people to put their time and attention in more valuable places. And instead of spending time reading the actual document, if the AI can read the document and then our people ask questions about what is contained in the document, it just allows them to really get down to the more important aspects of why they're doing the review, without having to spend the time to actually read a boring insurance document, and then can be trained and educated a little bit more on why they're asking these important questions, and have AI actually give a response to a question.
Sure.
They're still going to have to interpret the answer in many cases, but at least now it's taking their role to a higher level, as opposed to just reading a document and sort of feeling like they're filling in a checklist. It adds a lot to the process. But again, they're still going to, maybe to many of them, unfortunately, have to learn a little more of some of the nuances as to what they're looking for in the compliance review. But to me, it will organize the data in a more easily, where they can take action on the data.
Definitely. And I kind of associate labor shortage with attention shortage at times, as Mary said, right?
Yeah.
It's that mundane, it's that entry level. I don't want to do this all day. Maybe the burnout rate would be much higher if they are doing this all day. So it also just kind of goes into career development, that by utilizing automation, from an AI perspective, it will allow those to kind of move forward faster, because it can be done through technology. And isn't that what we want? Isn't that a really important resource to have, that we can push this to the technology side and focus on other things that really truly need our thoughts, our attention? Not to say it's taking the person out, it's not, but I think I just focus on that mundane work, that keeping employees motivated, interested, engaged. This shows that you're helping them. It shows that you recognize this piece as being that, and here's a tool or resource to help, which allows you to move forward faster.
And Brian, can I weigh in on, your conversation with your family about having concerns? There's the big bad AI is going to take over the world, right?
Yeah.
Do I think it's going to replace humans? Absolutely not. I think there's always going to be a need for human intervention. I can give a specific example in my world.
Please.
Where the like on a certificate of insurance, a lot of the sponsors and ownership want to see their names in lights as an additional insured on a certificate of insurance. Mm-hmm. And remember that by and large, there were people issuing those certificates of insurance. So there's human error there with spelling and punctuation. So if AI is given clear, defined parameters of what has to be in that description of operations, and we're talking about a certificate right now, could be an additional insured endorsement, right?
Sure.
A simple missing of an L in LLC may get spit out by an AI tool.
Right.
Whereas a human would have to intervene to say, no, that's okay. I mean, we're not going to reject it or lose sleep over it. Let's move on. But humans bring the whole thought process and decision making that maybe Copilot would develop down the road into that. But I think ultimately, the humans still have to have the QA, QC perspective.
I agree.
Brad, what do you think about that?
Yeah, again, they'll have to interpret the results. The way Copilot works now is it's asking a series of questions about the certificate of insurance and the related endorsements, and it's giving an answer, and it will suggest whether it's a green checkbox or a red X. But it also gives you the actual language that it relied upon to give you that suggestion. And I still want my team to read why Copilot gave that answer and approve, give the final approval. Maybe one day down the road, I'll completely trust it. And, if AI wants to take over insurance compliance review and reading COIs and policy documents, I'm not scared of that at all. I would encourage it. It's a job that I think eventually it could be completely capable of doing. But there's always going to be the teaching it something new, because something's always changing in insurance. There's nuances, there's new case law that's going to modify things. So there's always going to have to be that level of human involvement.
Definitely. Yeah. In some of the connections I have from a subcontractor perspective, the frustration is with some other softwares that they're utilizing is if it doesn't read it a certain way, it gets kicked back to them. It's yes or no, it's black or white, which to me really means there has to be that human element. There's frustration that, okay, I had a conversation with the general contractor and there's a reason why I put it in that way, but it's kicking back because it wants the answer this way. And it can't be that. It creates that frustration. Maybe there's more to the story. Maybe there's part of the relationship that's outside of what AI knows. And that's the reason behind that human touch. Like, it'll help you, it'll guide you, it'll participate, but it still needs that engagement from the human to recognize the validity of what the response is. And I'm looking at regulatory compliance too, that there's so much that you have to feed it. And regulations change constantly, right? Whether it's at the local level, the state level, national, sometimes global, it's always changing. So I just feel like it's even more important to have that human element. And maybe just with the name AI and how it kind of caters to younger generation, they're more open to AI. They're more embracing of it, right? It took however long to get my mother on Facebook, right? She was scared of it. But just AI to feel like that's a part of your job, maybe that brings them into it. Maybe they find it cool that it's a part of their job, that it's a part of their day.
Brian, I would agree wholeheartedly with that statement because I have some young folks on my team that the day ChatGPT was released, they were using it to, help draft letters around like non-compliant items. And it was spot on. So I do think that it will be embraced by the next generation even more so. But I think from a competitive perspective, which is one of the bullet points here, there's a lot of companies out there that are using AI for compliancy, not just in the construction space, but out there in the universe, right? I think the key in our world now is to get on board with this, because if you don't, it's kind of like you might be falling behind.
Yes.
So
I agree. And I'd rather be, personally, but within the company I represent, I'd rather be in the lead than following others, right?
Yep.
Now is the time. It's not that it's coming. It is here. AI is here. And people maybe just don't recognize how they're utilizing it, as I said previously. So it's important to me as being that client partner is that I'm working towards that success of my clients. And this is coming, whether I need to coach them on it, train them on it, push it towards them. It's something that's only going to grow and become more useful to us day in and day out. Awesome. I do have a couple questions. Let's see. One is, what challenges do you encounter when aligning insurance coverage with construction project needs? Who of you would like to take that?
I'll take a stab at it.
Yeah, cool.
I mean, every construction project is different in terms of its risk profile.
Yeah.
I mean, we have standard subcontract language that requires the typical types of insurance, GL, auto, umbrella, workers' comp. But, if you're doing asbestos remediation or something underground, pollution, even to professional liability. So there's always the element of tailoring your risk transfer requirements to the particular risks on a project. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I mean, we've worked on it with Copilot and with Constrafor with identifying scope specific risk issues that by educating Constrafor, the system, on what the scope of work is on a particular project, that it will then intuitively know to be looking for specific elements of an insurance program along those lines. So it certainly is a challenge, but again, we've been able to move that forward with AI.
Yeah, and if I can weigh in, guys, too, I mean, that's something that's very true. We look at like what are the insurance requirements at a sponsor level, but they could change down to the project level. And it all comes down to communication and implementation, right? If you set it up right from the beginning and you design it that way, it will look even down to particular trades, that certain trades have to carry extra coverages or different coverages than others. So, Brad, I think we're kind of doing the same thing from the other side of the fence.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Hope that answers your question. One that we kind of touched upon, to what extent is human oversight involved in the AI-driven compliance review process? I think we went through that there is and is going to remain human oversight involved. So no need to worry there. How easily can the AI system adapt to changes in regulatory requirements or business processes? Again, we talked a little bit about this, and that it's only as good as what you feed it, right? So that much like a human being, as it learns, it retains, or from a human being perspective, I hope it retains, but from an AI perspective, it retains it. You need to continue to stay ahead of providing it information so that it is always learning and becomes that resource tool to better understand what's current when it comes to regulatory compliance and requirements or business processes. Do either of you have thoughts on that?
I do. I think that there probably will need to be some type of maintenance on the back end. And one specific example, which Brad, I think you'll probably agree with, are around statutes of repose and limitations, because we do see that changing from time to time, from state to state. So there would be some maintenance required on the back end. However, if the policies that are structured to just say that the coverage extends through the state statute of repose or statute of limitation, it kind of solves the problem right there. It's when there's specific years that the coverage is limited to. That's the maintenance that has to be required with the co-pilot.
I agree. And there's case law,
right?
That's always going to evolve. So it's not always black and white, and what's true today may be overturned or become a precedent tomorrow. And you have to stay on top of those nuances and continue to feed your co-pilot with good information.
Agree. So it's ever evolving for us, and that we're just continuing to add information. We get it from those utilizing the platform, a place where they can add information, upload information that is proven, just so that it continues to be that resource that it wants to learn. You just have to teach it, it's pretty amazing.
And I think one last comment that I think it's interesting is that, from a GC's perspective, we may vary in our requirements or our hot buttons, let's call them. One may be willing to just look at the COI for the auto liability and not worry too much about the AI status there. So the ability that y'all have been working on is to allow the compliance metric, I guess, be dictated by the individual user and not based on some universal idea of what's wrong and what's right, because there are nuances, and so you can begin to take baby steps towards perfect compliance, but not have to be too onerous to your subcontractor business partners. At least I look at it from my perspective. I'm sensitive to that. So I think it is unique that there is no absolute right or wrong, but it can be tailored to an individual's requirements.
Definitely. And I know we're close to the end, but I do have one more, and this is insurance specific. In case studies, your experience, does the contract language prevail in court over what the sub was able to provide on the cert or endorsements? So if the contract has higher limits required, but the sub can't meet it, is the sub still held to the higher requirement in court? Maybe Mary, I'll start with you on that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think who posed it knows the answer, though. But the answer is it depends on what the language in the policy says, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if the policy says the higher of the contract or the policy limit, it depends what the policy endorsement says and then what the contract says. They kind of work in tandem with each other.
Makes sense. Hopefully that answers your question. Brad, any feedback on that one?
Well, I mean, I guess in the requirements, it probably says shall maintain not less than.
Right.
Which again is an example of nuanced language that an AI tool will be perfect to look for. Again, we talk a lot, and my mind is around this has been mostly with certificates of insurance and downstream risk transfer, but the uses in the insurance and risk management industry are endless, I think, in terms of being able to read volumes of documents and then having someone with knowledge pose smart questions to it and get its feedback is hugely important.
Definitely. Well, that 45 minutes came and went pretty fast. I just want to thank Mary, Brad. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your partnership. We continue to learn from you guys each and every day. Thanks to everybody who joined this webinar. I hope it was informative. We will send a recording afterwards. If anyone has questions, comments, concerns, That will be in the email. More than happy to have individual conversations, as well as Mary and Brad would be willing to speak with anybody should they have further information for them. But thank you very much, and have a great rest of your day.